Welcome back to Sketches of Michigan. Our next guest, Matthew Ball, who is a blues and boogie woogie pianist. Thank you for coming, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's talk a little bit more about, I guess, boogie woogie music and how you got into this in the first place.
Well, boogie woogie music is a jazz music that's from the swing era in America. So it is right alongside the big bands and the swing dancing. And how I got into it was I was practicing law, and I was pretty miserable doing it. So I just by coincidence happened to go to this Boogie Woogie festival back in late 2001. And I was just so awestruck with some of the performances I saw there that night. I decided that that's what I was going to do. And I had always played piano. I played piano since I was a young boy. So I had a lot of classical training to kind of be already acclimated to the piano. But that was the event that changed my mind.
So what, I guess, draws you to blues, to boogie woogie versus the classical, like you said you were trained on?
Well, it's easier to make a professional career out of jazz than it is classical piano. I mean, just from a practical standpoint. But I didn't felt as the classical stuff I enjoyed, but it didn't kind of rattle my cage in the same way that the boogie woogie and the blues music did. So it was just a real joy for my ears to become acquainted with it, and acquainted with it in that way on a performance stage in front of an audience.
So your CD, Boogie Woogie Kid.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about the pieces on here. Are they, I guess, classical sugar? I'm reading the back. Sugarfoot Boogie is the first one.
Yes.
Are they classical blues? Are they classical, or are they pieces that you wrote yourself?
They are, well, yes, they are. They are pieces that I wrote myself. Many of them, though, are a kind of homages to very traditional and classic boogie woogie pieces. You might say anthems. And what I try to do in my performance repertoire is to have a spectrum of playing that represents the blues and boogie tradition from both Chicago and New Orleans. Those being the principal cities for the blues development historically.
So you had a performance recently.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? What kind of music did you play? What were the pieces? Some of your favorites, or I guess crowd stoppers? Or
well, I think my favorites are the ones that are the crowd's favorites ultimately. But there are some that certain generation of people might know better than others. As I said, this is music that really originates in the 20s, 30s, and probably through the end of World War II, so up to 1945. So one of the, for example, if you remember, if you're over 65, you probably have heard of a song called The Sheik of Araby. And I do a boogie woogie based on that ballad. And the older crowd really likes that. One that I think everyone likes is my rendition of kind of the seminal boogie woogie piece called, I call it Boogie Woogie Kid. It's the title track to my album. Boogie Woogie Kid is my stage name. It's also the name of my website, which is boogiewoogiekid.com. But the original Boogie Woogie that piece is inspired by is a piece called Pine Tops Boogie Woogie, and it's one of those pieces that if you're a boogie woogie player, you're going to play a version of that. There isn't a person who plays boogie woogie that doesn't do some arrangement of it. So.
All right. Well, let's take a look and check out Matthew Ball playing some of his favorite pieces on the piano.